Hello, my name is John Doherty, and today we're going to talk about the second part of the golf swing called P2, and this is when the club shaft is first parallel to the ground in the backswing. And it's neat to look at this position because it can be done a million different ways, and there's lots of different parts of the body that can influence P2. P2 can happen fast, or P2 can happen way late in the golf swing. So just to kind of show you, when the club shaft, when we're looking at a golf swing, first hits parallel to the ground, the fastest way to get there would be to cock the wrist up, or to bend the right wrist back real fast would be the fastest parallel. The longest at P2 you could probably do would be to keep pointing the club at the ground until you couldn't do it anymore, and that would be the longest P2. So P2 doesn't necessarily need to be just the takeaway. It's really measuring when the club shaft's first parallel to the ground in the backswing. And just sort of, teachers use it a lot to spectrum players that they use as models, or a different type of swing sequence that they're trying to get their students to do. But that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So we're going to start with what influences the motion the hands make, and we're going to start with the body and the spine. So a big catalyst, and a lot of problems I see in the golf swing come from improper spine motion in the first few feet of the backswing to getting to P2. So kind of using this 45-degree angle view, a lot of times when people take the club back, they'll usually stand up. So the spine's in some degree of forward flexion from the waist at address. And a lot of times that's not comfortable for the player, or they want to turn, and to make a turn easier, it's easier to turn standing up. So a lot of times in the backswing, their spine will stand up at going into P2, and what you'll see is their P2 happens usually pretty high off the ground when the person stands up. The next thing with the spine is sometimes people go into side bend left. So right off the bat, they start side bending this way, like an old-fashioned reverse pivot, where all my pressure is going to my left foot. And the tendency for someone that is side bending is for the club to go outside to hit P2. Next one would be in forward flexion, is to rotate and keep forward flexion. So if I rotate to the right and keep my spine in a forward flex, the P2 is going to be typically low and inside. So the spine, just by its motions of forward bend or extension or side bending and then adding rotation, can change that P2. And it's important for the player to know what they need to do and kind of have a model set up so that when they get off, they can go back to their principles that they want in their golf swing or their particular style, and they can recheck and to make sure that they're not getting off right off the bat, either through the setup at P1 or takeaway at P2. Next part of the body that could influence is the forearm. So once we get the grip, the forearms, the left arm could pronate and cause the club face to open. The right forearm could supinate. It could be the right forearm causing it. So the right forearm could supinate off the bat, or the left arm could pronate. Also with the arms, you could see different motions with how the elbows go back. So you could see the right elbow work back more like someone's putting this way. So it's more like a golf machine called it push elbow position. Also with the elbows and forearms, you could get flexion from the elbows. So right off the bat, you could be over flexing from the elbows and get your P2 to do different things. Going down from that, you got the wrist, and from the wrist joint, you could have someone that actually uncocks it going back, or someone that cocks it up real quick, or someone that takes their left hand and dorsiflexes the left hand, and dorsiflexion and palmar flexion. Dorsiflexion is going to open the face, and palmar flexion is going to close the face. Next up, you got the hips. So the hips could influence a swing by somebody that doesn't turn the hips in the backswing versus someone that turns the hips real fast right off the bat and drags the club back. So like back in Bobby Jones' era with the hickory shafts, you saw a lot of swings where the pivot got started real early and the hands kind of went last. And they got kind of the nickname of caddy drag, where the left wrist just got, or the left hand, the hands just got dragged back by the pivot. So kind of all these different things that could influence how you take the club back, whether you take it back outside, in line with the baseline, inside, is the club face closed, is it open, are you cocking your wrist, are you uncocking your wrist, Are you standing up with the body? Are you leaning left, leaning right with the body? So kind of different things you see when you're looking at a golf swing going, what do I do and what do I need to do to get my swing more like a player on tour that you like to model after. So organizing what you do and understanding the different parts of the body that create this motion going into P2 is really the basis off of picking a certain way to do it. And I'm going to show you today my preferred way. Again, after you watch the first P1 video, I like the feet flared out. I like the stance width about 14 to 16 inches wide. I like the knees flexed over the feet. The stance is going to be slightly closed. Moving up to the hips are going to be square by slightly flexing the right knee more than the left knee. Moving up to the hips, I like to see the pelvic area have some degree of posterior tilt and not anterior tilt. So some degree to have a neutral spine, not too much posterior tilt where it's curled under, but just enough curl of that posterior motion to get it neutral in the back. Moving up to the back, I like to see the upper body rounded down to the over the ground, and the shoulders, the entire shoulder area over the balls of my feet. Moving up to the head, I like to see the chin down, the right ear lower than the left ear, and the face slightly rotated about 6 inches in front of the golf ball. The arms, I like to see them right elbow flexed, and on the right elbow, I like the right arm. I like to see the right bicep area angle slightly in, and then the right forearm angle slightly towards the ground. Left arm, I like to see it straight with the hand slightly forward. And then going into P2. So P2, how I like to see the club taken back is with two different things. The right wrist and the right forearm. And the right wrist is going to bend back, and the right forearm is going to flex and fan to the right. So two main things with the takeaway. I like to see the action be the right wrist bend back, the right elbow add some flex, and then the third thing is I like to see the right forearm work around the right elbow, and that's external rotation. This is internal and this is external, and we really need to set this external rotation. It makes it easy to go ahead and get started right off the takeaway. So a good friend of mine used to call this the war chief, flexing the elbow, and this the walrus. So we're going to kind of blend both. We're going to go right wrist bend, flex up as we fan to the right. Now, one more thing with the body while this is happening is the body is pretty quiet, but I would like to see the head slightly lower as we take the club back to fight the tendency of the head standing up in the backswing. So it's a feeling that you might have, but even if you do move it down, I like to see the head move down slightly into P2. All right, so here we got our setup. Nice little waggle. I'm kind of moving my feet. I like to feel the pressure in my feet move from my left to my right foot. Kind of makes the swing feel alive. I'm actually waggling a little bit what I'm feeling with my right wrist bending and my right arm flexing and my right elbow external or right forearm working around my right elbow, which makes my right shoulder externally rotate. All right, so I'm going to lower into P2 slightly as I bend my right wrist and get my right forearm, right elbow to flex, and my right forearm to work around my right elbow. Now, a couple things you'll notice when I'm doing this motion is my left arm. So my left arm is on my chest because my hands are in close to me. I want my hands to end to where my elbows are over my knees and the balls of my feet. So what you'll notice is when I bend back the right wrist, flex the right elbow, and externally rotate the right shoulder, my left arm pops off my chest so that you see a little gap between my forearms. This is happening because when the right forearm externally rotates, it raises and lowers the left arm. So when it externally rotates, it raises the left arm, and when it internally rotates, it lowers the left arm. So as my right arm is externally rotating and my right wrist is bending back, my left arm will slightly pop off the chest to get a little gap. I'm still got my armpit pressure point, but I've lost my elbow pressure point and my mid bicep pressure point. Right wrist bent back, right elbow slightly adding flex, and my right forearm working around my right elbow. All this done with my right ear still lower than my left ear, my chin still down, and my face rotated slightly left of the ball. And I'm going to lower my head just slightly as I do it. Now, it's really easy to stop at a position, but a position is motion, and the right wrist is not done bending back. And so going into P2.5, right before P3, which is left arm parallel to the ground, the backswing, the right wrist is going to continue bending back, and that's going to move the sweet spot around in a circle. And so at P2, where it's not like we get to P2 and that's it, that motion is going to continue, so that right wrist bending is going to continue going around into P2.5. Now when this sweet spot starts traveling in this circle like motion, that's what the hands and arms and pivot is going to follow into P4. So getting this club to start traveling in a circle by bending back the right wrist, a big mistake is cocking the right wrist up. You do not want to have any flexion, any wrist cock from the right hand at all. So that's all right wrist, with the right wrist remaining as level as can be. That is a big error that I see a lot of people do, is right off the takeaway start cocking their right wrist, and that makes the swing way too steep, and you got to get that wrist cock out somewhere in the downswing through the wrist, or a lot of people do it by falling back. So make sure in the takeaway that we do those 4 things. We're bending back the right wrist. We're adding slight flex in the elbow. We're moving the forearm around the elbow joint. That's external rotation. So from this view, good point to check is that the inseam on your shirt, that the elbow is not working behind the inseam in the shirt. That means I've done a good job externally rotating or starting to move my right forearm around the elbow. There's absolutely no roll of the wrist or forearms. So I'm not supinating and pronating my forearms. I'm not arching or palmar flexing my left wrist. Just bending back my right wrist, flexing my right elbow, externally rotating my right shoulder by fanning the right forearm around the bicep and slightly lowering. All right, so those are 3 things you can really work on to get the swing started in the right direction. Very minimal motion with the body. The knees are going to remain flexed. The hips will slightly turn based on the motion, with the arms carry the shoulders to a slight turn, but you really got to make sure that your upper body is staying over your feet as this is happening, because you do not want to pop those shoulders. You don't want to turn the shoulders too much. You don't want to stand up with the spine, because all that can cause the swing direction of the backswing to usually go too far to the right, and then you have to compensate somehow to come back around and make it online. I hope you enjoyed this P2 video, and I look forward to seeing it in P3. Have a good one.